Yeah, we learned to take critique in art school.
Yeah.
Yes, we like well, the first thing, one of the first things I showed my teachers when I said, do you want to do comics? What's the kind of comics you want to do? And then I showed them a drawing of Colossus from the X-Men fighting the Teenage Ninja Turtles, and
is that a real drawing?
Yeah, it was awesome. Like it was like this, and it was like copying Joe Madureira's Colossus from the '90s, and it was terrible, and it meant nothing. It showed nothing of what I wanted to do in comics. It meant nothing, and it had no message. It had no story. Had no thoughts behind it. So my teacher crushed me, and I understood that what you do is what people will see, and it's how they will understand what you're trying to say. So if you have something to say, you have to find a way to say it, and you have to take the feedback to see when you get it right or you get it wrong. And throughout art school, it was great to see people being
fucking
crushed.
tell me that y'all one of you took a test for the other one at some point. Like when you had like an assignment due, like you showed up and took the test for the other one. Because every like person that doesn't have a twin is always like, I just wish that I didn't have to go to class this morning and I could send my fucking double.
My brother, my older brother that I grew up with more, is about 2.5 years older, and once I got a little older and like we were the same size when I wasn't just kind of behind, you know, and this and that, like people say we look like twins. I don't think so. And we look very much alike, but like we're not twins. He constantly, like, just come in and just freaking, you know, like if he has to talk to somebody official, or sometimes he's been with the police to you, like just you go in, because you look so much, you look so much more like polite and this and that and whatever that. You go, he's always trying to convince me to like go in and like stand for him. Do me this favor, you want me brother.
Yeah. So real talk, if one of you commits a murder, are you gonna?
Once we had a car accident. And we were like in the roadway.
You want to put this on tape?
Yeah. We were in the road, and we had a car accident, and he was driving. He was trying to go and pass a truck in the middle of a curve. Yeah. And then another car came the other.
I was doing something wrong.
Yeah. And another car came from the other direction, and he steered over to the sides where people park. And the other car also steered to the side, and we had like a face-to-face collision. And then nobody died and nothing bad happened, but it was a wrong move, a wrong pass over. And he went with the two people to the hospital in the nearest city, and I was there waiting with the two broken cars thinking, I finished college and he still hasn't finished college. When you finish college in Brazil, you go to special prison. And when you don't, you go to regular prison with the regular bad guys. So when the cops come asking what happened, am I going to say I was driving? Or am I going to say that my brother was driving? And I actually had that thought because I was thinking,
I don't want to go to regular prison.
I wasn't going to.
Oh yeah, he would have gone to regular
he would.
Yeah. Well, that's like way more selfless.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, like,
very selfless.
I was gonna say, like, if you ever decide you're gonna commit a murder, you like put on a fake goatee and wear a hat. And then like leave the hat and the goatee at the scene.
As you would do.
A hat and the beard at the scene of the crime. So just to bring it back onto some sort of track, I think that covers the origin part of it.
Yes.
And I also think it covers sort of the maintaining it. I mean, it seems like your relationship to one another really helps you keep it alive.
Yeah, I think that's our advantage, I would say. Yeah.
two regular cartoonists who work alone all the time, because
we're always challenging each other and pushing
supporting each other.
supporting each other.
So-
That I think that's an exception to the rule.
It's different from working in a studio with lots of people, because that's very distractive, and you can take a coffee break and talk about whatever.
Yeah, sure.
We don't talk about whatever. We just talk about work all the time, about comics. Even when we're not talking about comics, we're talking about comics.
Yeah, of course.
So, and it's a hard thing for us to try to disconnect and think about something that's nothing related to comics.
Yeah. Well, it's like you're telling stories that are about your life.
Yeah.
Or your life seeps into it. It is really hard sometimes to step back from, the thing that I find as a creator coming to a convention, for example, is that I still to this day have a hard time not just going like, here's all these fucking crazy ideas I have, what do you think of these? Because like you're less, even though we have the internet and phones and whatever, like face to face talking to somebody that has the same passion,
Yeah.
it's still a rare thing for most people.
Yeah, it is rare. And it's good. Refreshing and revigorating.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, but even, I guess, in a closed circuit, I would imagine maybe like just hearing, other people talk about creativity. I'm a broken fucking record about like cartoonists and artists sitting in Artist Alley doing this.
No, I hate it.
I hate.
that. Yeah.
We spend. That's,
No,
that's
we
why
were-
we're so tired. Like
we were
spend
not-
the entire convention standing up on our tables.
Yeah.
So we could see everybody walking face to face. They never see the top of our heads. We're not in this shield. We're always looking in the
Staying
eye.
open
Yeah.
to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were not built to this new shape, this new way of doing Artist Alley things.
Yeah.
Where you do commissions and you sell prints and you make money. You're there. You're there to make money. We started going to conventions when Artist Alley was this loser place with all these older cartoonists.
Yeah, me too.
And they were there with their originals, and no one knew who they were, and they were like sitting around.
the Green Lantern.
And so
We had different problems. Our problems were like, how do we explain people that comics exist, that good comics exist?
Sure.
And the type of comics that we want to do exists. So we had to talk, we had to be, at least we had to incite the curiosity of people who never heard of us because we didn't exist, who never heard of our story because they didn't exist, or they haven't read it yet. We were not trying to get into this established part of the comics that people know. We're trying to be part of what comics
Are going to become.
Yeah, sure.
And
And now they are, but 20 years ago,
it's strange to be of an age where like our high school class has all seen some form of success in other media. That was a thing that like when I was a kid, that was like the way you justified doing comics to your parents. It was like you saw Rob Liefeld on a goofy ass Levi's commercial. And you said to your mom, like, that guy does what I wanted to do, or what I want to do one day. So many people we know have this like other success or this other thing, and it's all because they decided they were going to make a comic that didn't exist, or a type of comic that didn't exist. That says it all right there. Just fucking like, make the kind of comics you want to make, and there's no telling what can happen from that.
yeah, no, I think you're right. It's really hard to convince people to follow their dreams. It's gonna work out.
That's the end of every serious relationship I've ever had.
Yeah.
I remember
successful.
even getting sending off a submission to like sample packet of just like pages to Image and getting like rejection letters was almost like, fuck, they mailed me back.
Yeah.
Like even though it was a form letter, it was like they mailed me back. Like it must be
It's a real thing.
a thing that's attainable.
Yeah. Well, we never thought. We never thought money was an issue because for a long time we never planned to be successful in comics. So we just made sure that while we were doing comics, we were doing enough other things to pay the rent. So we made comics with all other different sorts of, we made money with all the other different sorts of illustration jobs, advertising, storyboards, illustration for kids, magazines, whatever came around. And then we made the comics that we were trying to make because at that time there was no...
It's a very Will Eisner approach to making.
Yeah, well, there were no Brazilian markets.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we were like making photocopy fanzines to show people what our comics were.
Yeah, those are the ones you showed me.
Yeah,
When I was
those
at your studio.
those were our first comics because there were no market, so there were no money. But there was only one way to show people the stories. We're making the stories, and so we never expected to make money. And for 10 years, for the first 10 years of our careers, we made money with something else. The first thing that made money was Umbrella.
Yeah.
The first time we had a page rate.
Yeah.
After that, it was only royalties from 1,000 copies of a book that took several years to sell. So, and we had this romantic vision of all these writers had other jobs and all these painters
Yeah, of course.
died, broke, and were only afterwards recognized. So we thought of art that way, and they are coming.
What if I thought it was a cop siren? I thought it was a cop siren. What if I got up and just started running?
Yeah.
I was like, they're finally fucking coming for me.
That's everything.
Like, we are from Brazil. We were like, oh, they found us.
Yeah, man, I held on to the idea for the longest time that, like, even though I never wanted it to, like, think success was impossible, it wasn't until I just realized, like, hey, at the end of the fucking day, I'm just maybe an artist.
Yeah.
I tell the stories I want to tell. That's a pretty good fate.
Yeah.
And the second that I kind of accepted that, like, truly, suddenly everything blew up for me. And now I'm wrestling with this idea that, like, there's all this opportunity, like, within my reach that seemed never impossible, but pretty distant. So now it's more like a Lord of the Rings kind of thing, where it's like, you know, I could actually pick up the ring. And I'm having a real hard time staying centered about that. I mean, not a hard time, but I'm having to constantly remind myself that, like, just because money and opportunity and the stage is possible doesn't mean that it's the best avenue.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, it doesn't make making comics any easier.
No, it doesn't.
It still takes as much time to draw and to write, and maybe now even longer time.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to stay focused on. It's not going to change how the work is done.
Yeah.
So basically, it doesn't change, and that's something that makes conventions worth it. Is when you have this, like, people come to you expressing all these different ways your story works for them, and how it changed them, and how it was important in a certain moment of their lives. And so, for us, at least, since we basically tell relationship stories. It's all about how people make their choices, and if we make people think about their choices a little more and appreciate their lives a little more and take a little bit more care of each other, that's already better than, I don't know. That's why we tell stories.
We used to follow the same path all the time. We were copying.
I was copying whatever he was copying.
Yeah, we were copying the same artists and trying to do the same things, trying to have the same style, to have the same look. But then you realize, like, what I want to do, I do it with a pen. What he wants to do, he does it with a brush, and that's okay.
You put a brush and a pen on the table, and you both look at that. Okay, you know, whoever picks up the brush first.
Yeah, you have to dive.
Yeah, under the count of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.